My intro is long. I'm sorry, but you will just have to deal with it. Three, two, one. Hello, universe. The other day, I read an interesting essay by Near Isle on his website, Near and Far. He has the most interesting fun facts, and here's what I learned. When bicycles burst onto the Victorian scene in the 1800s, they caused quite a commotion. These cool contraptions made it possible to travel much further and faster than you could ever go on foot. Bikes were a lot cheaper than horses, not to mention simpler to maintain and, in my opinion, less smelly. Bicycles gained popularity with a group whose transportation options had historically to date been limited: women. At the time, if women wanted to get somewhere without walking, they typically needed someone to take them there in a horse and carriage. Usually that would be the patriarch of the household. And if he was unavailable or unwilling, tough luck, or hoof it or stay home. With bicycles, women could be more independent than ever. Awesome, right? Well, not according to those in power. Instead of celebrating the newfound freedom that bicycles had brought, authorities drummed up a spectacular display of moral panic. Here are the dangers of the bicycle, according to many of the era's medical experts. Ready? Bicycles would transform women's feminine gait into a ghastly, ugly walk, characterized by a plunging kind of motion. Women would suffer from bicycle face, a permanent consequence of being exposed to the air at, get this, superhuman speeds. Women's delicate bodies would break down from the strain of riding bicycles, leading to appendicitis, infertility, and my favorite, folks, psychosis. In hindsight, these ideas are what we would call ridiculous. But back then, they were widespread fears, and they were amplified by manipulative people who wanted women to be docile and dependent. Now, imagine yourself around 2009. Rewind yourself, 12 years. And had I told you at that time that you would regularly get into an unmarked car with a total stranger, have him or her drive you around, pay them, tip them, and even worry if they would rate you well as a passenger in their car, you would have thought I was bananas. Had I told you that you would have a total stranger pick up your restaurant orders, drive them in their own personal cars, you would accept them and eat them with not a worry in the world, you would again think I was insane. But guess what? It's called Uber, DoorDash, Zomato. It's insane to think how services or ideas like this were adopted so fast and revolutionized our way of life. I bring all of this up because creating something new, people, introducing it to the world, getting it people to change their behavior, even like, no brainer bicycles, it's hard, super hard. So today we're going to talk to the inventors of a robot that I believe will have an impact on 2.5 billion people across the globe who have flatbreads and rotis, or as the Guju girl and me likes to call them, rotlis, as part of their staple diet. I'm talking about the magical kitchen robot, the Rotimatic. This machine magically, and yes, I'm going to call it magic again, takes flour, water, oil, and pops out fresh, hot rotis, pizza, tortillas, puris, really any sort of flatbread. 70,000 Rotimatics have been sold across 20 countries, 45,000 units alone in the US, including the one that I own. At the time of this recording, 113,332,501 rotlis have been made with Rotimatic. Please meet my kitchen heroes and the inventors behind this magical Rotimatic, Pranoti and Rishi Israni. Hi.
Wow. That was the best intro ever. Wow. Who
Thank
are
you.
these folks? Who are all these inventors? Superb what you just said. Thank you.
How are you two?
Oh, great. We're very well. So glad to be speaking to you.
You
Absolutely.
both are zooming in from your HQ in Singapore. Is that right?
Absolutely. This is where Rotimatic got created. And it's so awesome to be on your show. And thank you
Aw.
once again for that intro. It was really awesome.
It's surprising how you can be so far away, but your energy comes in through the screen full force. It's so
Absolutely.
wonderful.
Oh, well, for the radio audience, I want to describe what I'm seeing. I see behind them all of these Rotimatics, which we will get into all the different versions and we will describe it. But before we get into all of that, okay, so I know that both of you grew up in India. So I have to ask, did you watch the Jetsons growing up? Do you know what the Jetsons are?
No, we didn't watch
We
that.
Okay.
didn't watch it growing up, but we watched it
But you
later.
so you know what it is though, right? So the
Yes, of
Jetsons,
course.
for those that don't know, I've talked about this before because this is like my favorite cartoon in the world, is this futuristic cartoon where they have all these futuristic kitchen gadgets and a robot who's a housekeeper named Rosie. So for me, that was like my magical kind of like what the future could look like. Okay, but have you seen Back to the Future Part 2?
We've seen part 1 for sure.
Okay, so you
where he
need
goes-
to watch part 2. And for everyone listening, please Google, not right now, after the show, but Google this. It is called into YouTube. It's called Back to the Future 2 Pizza Scene. Because let me lay it out for you. There is this machine where, and they have this tiny, I think it's Pizza Hut, tiny, this size pizza. And she puts it into this hydrating machine. So it must have been in their minds a dehydrated pizza into this machine. It gets big, and the kids at the table say, "Mom, nobody hydrates a pizza like you."
Wow. And when was this released?
This, and like
time
the 90s, right? 80s or 90s, Michael J. Fox, Back to the Future Part 2. But it's amazing because in preparation talking to you, I wanted to actually go back and watch the scene again. And you people, when you look at this kitchen, it's kind of freaky because a lot of things, while it wasn't as we imagined, it's starting to appear. So you will have to look it up now. I know I have you curious.
Absolutely, we are.
Okay. Before we get into everything that's the Rotimatic, though, you two are like a match made in heaven. So not only are you two husband and wife, but you both are engineers. And you know when they say the opposites attract? Okay. First of all, Rishi's a software engineer. Pranoti's technically a hardware mechanical engineer. It's like opposites, right?
Definitely. Even though both of us are engineers, our worlds are very, very different.
Yeah.
Within engineering, they are worlds apart.
So you are like opposites attract, but you're like the perfect couple to invent stuff.
Yeah,
thankfully.
I think
So before meeting Pranoti, before working at Rotimatic, I did a software startup called 10Cube. And I came with all these software ideas where you click a button and things move, and you press a button and things compile, and you have your next version and next version. And then I joined Rotimatic with Pranoti, and these worlds are just, they can't be further apart.
Yeah.
When you think of something and by the time you have your first idea or prototype, it can take 2 to 3 months. So the cycles are really long, and these engineering disciplines are very, very far apart. But it makes it all the more exciting because once you put these two different things together, you can do so much more for the world.
But it wasn't always this harmonious, was it? Because when you two first met, you two used to argue in your college library. Is that true?
No, so that's the constant comparison we used to have, because my perspective of the world came in from the whole mechanical engineering training that I had, and his was the computer science, very abstract. Mine was very, very hardcore, solid. You can touch and feel everything. So it was always about how do you envision a solution. But I think the best part was, because his perspective and my perspective was so different, the solution was always a very holistic solution. So I think Rotimatic was also one of those discussions and arguments we got into, and that's how the whole solution got designed.
So in the beginning for Pranoti, she had to touch everything. And I wanted to be very far away from touching anything because in my world, everything, you just move your fingers. And that's all you do essentially. But in her world, you cut and chop and drill and all of that.
Yeah, and I think for Roti also, right? You can't just make a machine in your mind. You won't be able to taste the roti, right? How do you know the roti is going to come out just exactly the way you would do it by hand. So it needed a lot of engineering, where you had to, start prototyping from day one to see the first prototype. How was the roti, and was it thick enough, was it thin enough, was it puffing, and so many of that. And in software world, you don't have that, right? You just run a program on a screen.
So, Pranati came up with this line which settled this argument once and for all. And we were having an argument once, and I said, software is eating the world. What are you talking about? You know? So after a while, she said, you know what? But you can't eat software. And that is her line now for this hardware software debate and divide. And
Yeah, that settles it.
the marriage is better. The marriage is better than them fighting.
I love it. Well, let's go back to the moment where you get this idea that you want to create a machine that makes rotis, because this is an important moment. And I want you to paint the picture, because what I uncovered I actually really love, because it was the beginning of your marriage. Rishi, you had a startup job. So you were still kind of like on a meager salary.
Yeah.
And let's paint the picture for our audience. What happens that night?
So I think before that, one thing is very, very important to know, that Pranoti is one of the bravest people I have met. Like, she is like super, super, super brave. And I think the thing that we connected on right at the beginning when we were dating, or very early days, is that she wanted to do something different. She wanted to do something new. And everything we would look at would be like, okay, is this something that is exciting? Is it something that can be done? And most of our conversations would go in that direction. How did the Rotimatic idea come out?
So I, when I was a student studying for mechanical engineering, I was always excited about projects and designing products and solutions. So the project that I had taken up and designed and built was an automatic iron for clothes. So it was
Wow.
it was a
I
super
need that
exciting
like
project,
right
right?
now. So can you
Exactly.
please like make that happen?
Yeah, I think the next 10 years of my life I'll dedicate to that. But that was the start of my journey, as thinking about how engineering can really be applied. And it was so exciting, that project, because at the end of it I actually had a working prototype, and it got some award, and that sort of gave me this feeling that, okay, this is possible. You can envision something crazy, and there is a method to that madness to arrive at a solution. And then I started working. So that our lives in the early years, we got married pretty early, immediately after we graduated, in fact, because I think our parents were like, you guys are perfect for each other, why wait, just get married, we
They
don't
said
want to.
they said, give us a reason for not getting married, and we couldn't come up with any.
Yeah, actually that was their questioning, that okay, what are you waiting for?
So parents everywhere, that's the question to get your kids married.
Yeah. Yeah, but then like you said, he was doing his own startup, so I was observing him from the sidelines, seeing how hard it is to start a company and what all does it take. There's so much dedication, a lot of fearlessness that you need to have. And I was doing my job, and in my job I was trying to pick up as much as I could on how to get a product from a sketch to all the way to manufacturing and out in users' homes. And I was pretty lucky to have that experience. And so we would always have these conversations on weekends or evenings. Okay, what problem do we want to solve? And as a married couple, we wanted to be idealistic. You know how Indians are as well. You want to cook at home, you want to do all the right things the right way. So we started cooking, and we realized that, oh my god, making a roti is no joke. And not
Tell
just
me
because,
about it.
right? And I mean, and I grew up as like, my mom was a tomboy herself. She rode a bike and she played cricket, so she didn't want me to be a very typical teach me cooking at an early age. She didn't want that. She was like, you learn it, you'll pick it up, it's there. Women know how to cook, they don't need to be taught. That was her philosophy. So the first time when I made a roti, I realized that, okay, this is not an easy task, and you have to do it every day. and it takes about half an hour every day. There's a before process and there's an after process. There's a lot of cleaning to be done and all that. So that's was the time when we were like, okay, this is a problem that needs fixing because there is no solution.
Yeah.
12 years
Other
ago.
than make Rishi do it. So thank God you didn't do it, Rishi.
That's the thing, he is a software coder, right? So he would write a code and then I don't know what he would eat, but so a roti had to be made.
And actually, what it turned out is that this problem was so close to our heart, and we didn't realize it then because we grew up. Both of us grew up see our mothers not joining us at the dinner table.
Right.
Moms would be, and I clearly remember that my mom would make lots of rotis for her, and then she would make a thick one for herself so that she did not have to make too many for herself.
Right. Yes.
And I mean, at growing up, I didn't realize it, but now when I think back,
And that's the story we connected on, because I then recollected how when we were growing up, me and my brother would wait at the table for our mom to join. But for her it was like, okay, that's her way of making sure we eat warm and fresh rotis, and she would always join in the end. And when we connected on that, we realized that, okay, look, we are never going to stop eating rotis because it's a soul food, right? For us, we have to make sure that because what we realized is people had stopped eating rotis because it is so tedious to make them and it's time consuming, or you need to have the practice to make a good roti.
yeah.
And when we realized that, we said that, okay, this is a important problem that I think we can put our brains together to solve. And that's how that sort of
So I clearly remember, you're absolutely right. At that, in those days, my startup was in one of those phases where we were struggling to get product market fit or figuring that out. I can't clearly remember. And we were opening an office in India. So I was in India, and Pranoti and I were chatting, I think on MSN those days. And she says, "Look, you know what? I think I have learned whatever I had to learn here, and
I just
I'm
completed.
thinking of quitting." So I was like, "Okay." And I think next morning she quit.
Yeah, because I had just finished a project, and before they assign a new project to me, I was like, okay, this is my window. If I take on a new project, then I will probably not feel like going. So we were chatting, and it was like that. Okay, this is a big
It was like
problem.
a plunge. It wasn't very
Yeah.
planned.
But I knew what I
Yeah.
wanted to
Yeah,
do. So
yeah,
it
You
was,
already had this idea of the Rotimatic
yeah,
brewing
yeah.
in your mind.
yeah.
Before we move forward and talk more about this journey, I think Rishi, you hit on such an important point is that I think just as a society, we sort of internalize like normal, like my grandma just like making roti after roti, or like my mom, like it was almost okay that they weren't eating dinner or lunch or whatever with us, right? And
Mm.
we never question it. Like you said, we didn't even know. And I think, now, Pranoti, I've heard you say this in other interviews, we're of the generation where we were working and it wasn't that we wanted to be domestic goddesses at home, but we wanted to have healthy meals. And
Mm.
we're sort of, I like to say, in that sort of in between moment of society, right? So that's why I feel like your machine, what gets me so excited about it, it's almost like a feminist gender equality ability, right? I mean, think about it. Like, what are the two kitchen machines that have really revolutionized domestic work? I mean, it's the washing machine and a dishwasher. We don't
Mm.
even think about it anymore. I
Yep.
mean, I was thinking about that before I was hopping on today to talk to the both of you. Other than maybe my first apartment in San Francisco, which I would not let my own child live in this very unsafe, crazy one room place, but it did not have a dishwasher, which is fine because I probably ate out and didn't care. It was like one room and at least the bathroom worked. But for the most part, I think most of my listeners are in a situation where they've taken for granted the things that have absolutely revolutionized their life, which is why in the intro, I really did want to bring up that bicycle example, because this feels like there's got to be some resistance to this idea as a woman, as a mother, like I'm not going to be making the rotis anymore, right?
Yeah.
And so here's the thing is like now you invent this amazing machine. And I know when I introduced the machine to my mother, She was very excited. She was like shocked. I will never forget my mom and dad watching this machine. And I could see her head turning, but for so many years, it was so ingrained in her identity of making rotis that it took this shift in behavior. And that's really not any different, people, than all the other great inventions of our time. So it really took you wanting to make this better for all of us to not be slaving over that, stove. Or in my case, I couldn't even ever figure out how to make it round. Okay, people, I'm going to admit it. Mine is uneven, not round. It's fine. My husband's still fine. So my grandma, when she said, "How will you find a husband if you can't make a roti?" I found one and I got him the machine. So we're good.
I know. That's the shift that has already started to sort of come forth. And like you said, we were never really, surprisingly, we never thought that to be a barrier for us,
Yeah.
because we were the users of the machine in our minds even before the machine was ready. We always wanted to put ourselves as the first users, and we felt that if we need a solution like this, I'm sure we will have enough people who also have the same problem. And I think whenever we would describe what we are working on to people, their reaction would be, you know what, I will be the first one to buy this machine. And that sort of gave us the impetus and confidence that yes, okay, so it's not like we are thinking some crazy idea which nobody would want. But it was a no-brainer in that sense, right? It's like the world's first washing machine. If somebody describes it to you that you don't have to wash clothes ever in your life, it was kind of like that, right?
And more so with the modern generation, where women are working and they see their identity as part of being an equal in the house. Maybe a generation earlier, uh, many women looked at themselves as the sole caregiver or the sole
Right.
uh, as
The
somebody who
domestic goddess of the home.
yeah, domestic goddess.
It's their
This is very dangerous
responsibility.
territory.
No, it's fine.
Yeah,
It is what it is, because
Yeah,
somebody
yeah.
has to take the lead, right, in the house.
Exactly.
I think women have that advantage of
yeah.
training or perspective. And so we do take lead in making sure the nutritional aspect of your household is taken care of, and kids are eating on time, they're eating the right food, all that is definitely
and
something.
both of us, at least when we do our own report card, we think that we have a very equal standing in our own family, and we treat each other as much as possible to be absolutely equal. And but I have still noticed that when it comes to taking care of from an aptitude perspective, when it comes to taking care of the food or the health of our kids in the family, sometimes I am a little bit more relaxed, and Pranati has that absolute clarity many times. She says, "Nope, not this. This is not. We're not going to do this." Or sometimes, the modern drug that we have today, which is the social media or
Yeah.
YouTube, or for kids sometimes. And so Pranati has a. So I think, as a woman or as a partner in the family, she has a little bit more clarity on how you should do nutrition for the family, how you should do nutrition for the mind, which is controlling access to various digital
Yeah,
things in the family.
true,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
maybe it's the nurturing aspect of a woman where she just by
Yeah.
default leads a little bit more than the man.
And I think like you said, I mean, it's been passed down. And I think what's changing now, though, and that's what to me makes this Rotimatic so exciting, is now my son is going to make a great partner for someone in the kitchen, because guess what? He knows how to make a roti. He presses a button.
Absolutely. It's just going to make anyone can roti now, right?
Yes.
Even my 4 year now he's 8, but when he was 3 or 4 years old, he had started making rotis on his own. He
So
knew
it's like
which buttons to press.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's like a game changer. So let's go back for a second, because I think the journey of inventing this machine is one that I think is so inspiring. It's a story of perseverance. And so we're going to go back to the moment where you didn't just tell your husband, "Toodles, I'm leaving my job. So sorry, I'm doing it over text." People say you shouldn't break up over text. Pranoti, like, you didn't think you should at least call him? Nope, I'm just going to chat him.
Yeah. And I just wrote this long resignation letter. The next day I emailed it out, and my boss was like, okay, what's
Yeah.
going on? He got a shock.
I
But then
bet. Okay, so you quit your job the very next day. And what year was this? 2008.
8 June
Okay, so
June
people,
2008. Yeah.
oh my God, do you remember the exact date too? Just
Yeah,
the month.
because I incorporated the company almost the same month. So 27th of June 2008, I had like Simplistic Inventions Private Limited incorporated.
Wow. Okay, so people, I want you to think back. 2008 was what, like 14 years ago?
13
That's
plus, yeah.
13,
Yeah.
14. I don't know, people.
Yeah.
Okay. But this is how long ago you started this Rotimatic
Journey.
magic
Yeah.
journey. Okay. So I would like for you to walk us through this journey because it is hard. I mean, here's the thing. I just feel like if you're going to invent something hard, you're going to fail. Like there's this Thomas Edison quote I just love where he says, I've not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. And looking at the machines behind this lovely dynamic duo, those are all the machines that did not work perfectly, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Kind of like, there's an iterative process that you have to go through in product designing. And the first prototype is not going to be the complete solution because it's such a complex problem you're trying to solve, right? You are trying to solve for auto dispensing, auto measuring, auto dispensing, auto kneading, auto transferring, making the dough ball, auto pressing, and then cooking, puffing, and auto dispense, like,
Ejecting.
delivering,
Yeah, yeah.
ejecting, or whatever. So there are like about 10 functions that this machine needs to do. And also another thing, Alexandra, I wanted to point out was that, when we envisioned the solution, we wanted it to be end to end. We said that no compromise on the solution. It cannot be half baked, or you just make a dough ball, or you just do this, or let the user put in the ingredient, measure and put the ingredients.
Yeah.
We said no.
Or you restrict the
The
flour
flour type,
to a consumables model where we say, oh, you know what, you want to use Rotimatic, you must use our flour.
or you must buy a cartridge or any of that. So we decided that no, if I'm going to be the user of this, or what I want is, I want a replay, like a robot, literally, right? I want to be given a break from roti making, so I need somebody who does it for me. So I am going to have a container which is preloaded. All I tell the machine is, okay, here is the thickness or the roast level that I like. This is the quantity of rotis I want. I say play and I walk away, and I come back with come back to ready rotis. So that was sort of the end to end solution, which on that day when we decided sort of to start this journey. So when we started solutioning, right, the first month, it was about breaking it into these sub functions, like that, the ones that I just broke the whole problem statement down to. And so when you're building a machine, so what you see behind us, the wall, where we have the first prototype, it didn't do all the 10 functions, but it did the most major ones, which is making the dough and then flattening and cooking it into a puffed roti. So that version did that. And then I moved on to build the next assembly into it, which is the dispensing function. And then I built some other transferring mechanism. So it basically had a journey to itself, because you cannot build a machine in one go. So you have to break down the statement and iteratively go from there. So it was quite a lot of iterations, but in the end,
I
by around,
yeah.
yeah, you have some.
No, I think there are the other fundamental difference in hardware and software is that from roti making, everybody makes rotis. I mean, more than 5 billion rotis are made by hand every day, but it is not a quantified science. It's There's a lot of human judgment. Some people don't get the dough right, some people don't get the shape right, some people don't get it cooked right. And the truth is that the science of making is only defined for users in a very crude way.
Yeah.
So we had to discover it, quantify it. So we had to understand a domain of roti making from a more scientific perspective. And to our surprise, the biggest failure was when we realized that, in hindsight, all of this will sound very obvious, that there are many types of flour, and all these types of flour handle different types of water, and they are needed in a different way. And when you talk about an input set, which is flour and water, which is uncontrolled and can vary a lot, then automating it means building some sort of intelligence, or some sort of new sensors that we had to build, some sort of intelligence we had to build. I think this is something that we missed in the early days, where we thought, there is a dough maker you can buy from.
Actually, not true. I mean, from the way when I started, I knew that this had to be put into an algorithm of sorts, because that's the reason why I pulled Rishi over.
But that was so complex. We didn't. It was so
Yeah, I
complex.
think the complexity we did not
Yeah.
anticipate.
Yeah.
That I thought, okay, fine, we'll do some statistical analysis. We'll have some way to figure out what should the algorithm, mark as a range for adjusting the flour and water ratio. And so I thought it should be doable. It shouldn't be so complex. But then when Rishi came in, and then when we started building it, we realized that, oh my God, this is because you're dealing with non-Newtonian fluid, right? The flour and water, the dough is so difficult as a material. So there are just too many variables as well, which are not in your control. So, for example, how you've stored the flour changes the properties of the flour. Where the wheat has come from, which region, changes the protein and fiber content, which changes the water absorption ratios. So there are variety of ingredients and factors which are just impossible to calculate. So it's not just a complex problem, it's a difficult problem to solve.
Did you have like a bunch of like ajis and grandmas like coming in making rotis and you're like observing them? Like, because rotis are very personal, right? Like, I feel like in Gujaratis, we tend to have that very skinny kind of roti. And I have to say, the thing about watching a roti come out of the Rotimatic for the first time, people, is like you're watching it, you're so impressed, you see the ball, you see it go through, but the most impressive and satisfying is when it puffs, because that's when you realize, damn, this is for real. Like, this is going to be good. And that's the thing, like all the nuance that you're describing, there's like, I'm sure millions, trillions more things that could go wrong and was so hard, but I love the personalization, how crispy you want it, how soft you want it. I mean, that's the thing. It's such a personal
Yeah.
item.
Yeah, yeah.
And in the process of building this, I remember uh, the first office of Simplistic was a tiny one, and all the other startups would know that Pranoti is doing something when they would smell some burned rotis
Oh God,
in the
yeah.
early days. Like, oh, Pranoti is doing something.
Yeah,
What was like the worst? Did anything ever blow up? That's like really, I always want to know that about inventors. Have you blown up anything?
yeah, I've done tons of accidents caused because of me in the building. So there was this officer in the building who placed an extinguisher right outside the door for me,
Oh my gosh, that's
just in case you catch fire. This is where you go. So there have been
I,
some funny incidences.
I remember the most funny. One day, Pranati came home and she had a bald patch. I was like, Pranati, what happened?
no way.
Yeah. So she was repairing something in the Rotimatic, and of course, it was in the early days. And a lock of her hair got caught in the
Yeah.
kneading motor.
Okay, so this is, when we say there was blood, sweat,
Sorry,
and tears,
It's very embarrassing.
I was not too graphic.
that's
And,
amazing.
and it got caught. Then she had to like stop it and then call somebody to cut it. And
Oh yeah, it was pretty terrible because it just got like suddenly it
it's
got
dangerous.
caught and
I
it
mean,
literally pulled my hair. The nerve endings just died immediately.
Has it never grown back?
No, that's why I have a bald. That's my secret bald
That's
patch.
there's a secret bald spot under there.
It's like the rotimatic blessing that I
I
have.
feel like your evaluation should be higher solely because of that. When people talk about like equity, sweat equity, people, you cannot beat a bald spot equity. Okay? Burn per head.
Especially for a woman and right in
no,
the
just
top
kidding.
of the head.
No longer there.
It's yeah, but it was so funny. It
I
was
love that story. You know what else is that in all the iterations that I see behind you, you are scared someone's going to steal your idea, so you name them roti but inverted. Is that correct? So no one would know what you're trying to make.
Yeah, because you have to in hardware when you're designing these parts, right? In the beginning, I would make the parts myself. I would go to the labs in universities, and I don't know if I can say this, but they never asked me who I was because they remembered me as a student, and they thought I'm doing PhD or something, and they would never ask for my card because I didn't have any. Because I was no more a student, but I would use the CNC machine labs
That's
to build these
amazing.
parts because I didn't want to waste money on them. But eventually, when you have to start building parts, you have to send them out to prototype makers for making, because you make a CAD model and then somebody makes it into a machined part. So the naming of the parts, I would just inverse the words and letters. It would be Roti, Itor, and Itor. So all my prototypes, they are named Itor 1, Itor 2, Itor 3.
That's
Yeah.
so funny.
It was so
So
funny because I was so paranoid. We didn't realize because but now we are like, okay, here is Rotimatic. It's been in the market for 4 years. Please, we need more people to
yeah,
work on it or
great.
get something creative. But yeah, those were the early days. We were so
How did
young.
And
you know this was going to be a real business? Like, when was that moment where you went to go look for financing? Like, when did it become really real in both of your eyes? Like,
I think in 2009 there was a business plan competition. So see, there are few ways of getting money for the, because hardware needs a lot of investment, right? In the early days till the product is not ready. So you need to do patent filing, that costs a lot. You need to start hiring a team. You need to buy the material. The prototyping costs are quite high, and we just had $20,000 of savings when we started the when I incorporated the company. And Rishi was so gracious and so supportive that in spite of his also being in a startup where he was you know in India trying to set up his business there, I was here starting the company, and we just in no time he said, yeah, $20,000, just start, go.
that is not right, because it was her money. It
Right.
was her decision. It was none of my doing.
No, but
Unfortunately, the baggage that we come up grow up with as Indians, like, oh, you need your husband's permission, but it's none of
no,
that
no. I
in
think
our
it's
family.
it's a team thing, right?
Yeah,
It's a decision that you take together, right? You can't just say I'm going to go start a company without. So that
I
was,
mean, you
he was
can.
super
but
supportive.
Rishi, I'm
And
so glad you mentioned that, though. I think that's so important for you to be like that forthcoming about it, right? I think as females, we always play it down so much, right? And like, I mean, I think for the both of you, there's so many aspiring inventors, and some of them are women solving problems that maybe we have some intuition about that only females would think about as a problem. So
mm,
for them to sort of hear the type of partner that they could have in their life that will supercharge their success, like that's important. Like you two are like a role model for that. So I think that like the honesty and the forthcomingness is just incredible.
no, that was really very supportive, and it was.
I find this
eh,
very weird. What do you mean supportive? It was your money, your life, your dream. I
No,
mean, I don't feel I have the right to say yes or no to what you want to do. It's yours,
that's
right?
true. That's true.
Like, who am I to say, oh, you need my permission, or and vice versa? Actually, like I said, we are very
Right.
equal. Neither
Yeah,
do I expect to ask for permission.
yeah,
It's a different type of
yeah. But
equation.
that's true. I think I'm
Yeah,
only coming in from an angle of team, as husband and wife, as a team. You don't want to do something without the you have to be happy about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
So $20,000 back then was a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Because we
that is true.
it feels like a very
Well, it
little
was your
now, but
entire life savings, really. That's what
Yeah,
was
yeah, it
going
was. It
on.
was.
And
You're
yeah.
right.
like, okay, so you win a business plan competition. Is that what happens?
So then after about 6-7 months, when I had the first prototype, I had built a first prototype which made a good roti, by the way. It wasn't fully complete, but it was at least you could see that, yes, this is a small compact form factor. I can imagine what it would, and the roti tasted well. And I said, okay, this is a business plan competition. The prize money is $40,000. I think I want to go for that. I just wanted to win that $40,000, because that was a huge money. And in that process, you also, in the early days, you want credibility, because honestly, back then a lot of people thought this is a very crazy idea.
Oh yeah,
Because
yeah.
first they thought, okay, if it is such a big problem, then how come nobody has solved it because when you describe your elevator pitches that billions of people eat this and 3 billion rotis are made every day, and there's still no solution for it, then everybody's like, okay, then why hasn't it been built?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that was number one. Second, it was also about you as an engineer. It's your first invention, you don't have any credibility. So this business plan competition was for that. So, and luckily I won the first prize. I was one person team back then, and there were some really large teams. So I was like, okay, I don't care, the product and the idea I think is big enough, let's see, give it a best shot. And surprisingly, we won $40,000. There
Wow.
was a government grant that came along with it. It was like a matching 40,000, so plus 40,000,
Wow.
and plus 1 year of rent free. It was a small office, but still, it's all this
They
adds up.
know you might blow up the office though.
I swear, I think the insurance.
To you. They needed to up their insurance.
I know. I think that credibility was quite important, because then people
Yeah.
started seeing Rotimatic for the first time. There was like, okay, there is somebody who's trying to build. There is definitely this problem, and if it is solved well, then it can be an important invention. So then people started, giving
Yeah.
us different attention, and then we raised our first angel round.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have some wonderful people who came, joined the journey in the beginning. But like Pranati said, the first, I think the first year or two were just getting people to believe that this is not a undoable idea. It
Mm.
can be done.
Correct.
And I think after that, once people started seeing a little bit of proof of the first
Correct.
prototype,
Correct.
and then
I
things
think
started.
that's when people. It's very hard to imagine. Like if I tell you there is going, like what you just described in your intro. Imagine there's going to be this thing, and then somebody's going to just rate you for your driving. People can't imagine what the solution could be unless you put a mock-up or a prototype in front. So since we had that, then it became slightly easier. And like Rishi said, we had very supportive angel investors early on who were like, okay, we are going to encourage you guys, this is something important. So they came along. And then one thing, once you have more funding, then you start building a team, so you move from, the iterations get started looking, get better and better. And I think the next big event that happened for us was Rishi's company got acquired, and
Oh,
he had a successful exit. And then things were again very different for us, because now we weren't this living on
yeah.
No,
literally hand to mouth sort of salary. There was no salary, right? We were just
Right.
putting in whatever money we had into the company, and then things started shifting. And
but I must tell you that it was a like getting into a hardware startup in hindsight. Actually, it was incredibly hard. The journey is incredibly hard because if you look around, you see not too many companies
hmm,
in software. If you're hiring, you have a big ecosystem. You are hiring talent that has learned on somebody else's expense and is but in a hardware startup, not a lot of innovation
Well,
happens.
why is hardware still so hard? Like it is so hard. Why? Why do you both think so?
It's so hard. I think because the real world is very hard.
hmm.
Yeah.
Because
I'm trying to
because
teach my son that the real world is very
no, I mean I didn't mean it that way. I mean in the physical world, in the physical world, really don't happen always the same way. I mean, the equations that you learn in school about physics, they don't exactly apply 100% to the real world. I mean, there is this and there is a little bit of that. And
Hmm.
so that is why, and most people, unfortunately, for the hardware world, it requires you to be extremely imaginative and creative. It's I think it's understated. So, for example, if I asked you to design a particular part of Rotimatic, that part doesn't exist anywhere in the world, right? You have to create it
Hmm.
from scratch.
Hmm.
And this is not many times, this is not true for many other things. So
Hmm.
every little part is unique for every product.
I think there are two types of hardware products, right? One that has never been done before, and one that has been done before, but now you're trying to improve them. So for example, this mic or a laptop, they are also hardware products, right, at the end of the day. But a mic, you have some starting point, you know how to put things together. I think with Rotimatic, that was the hard bit.
Yeah.
There, the reference points were very, very little. Like, we did all our research. We those roti makers were there
Yes,
in the market,
the
which is like,
tortillas. My mom who was a working mom, that's what she was using. But it's just,
right. It's
it
just a
doesn't,
flattening. It's the
yeah, it doesn't
flattening and
really
the
do
heating
anything
disc,
else.
right? So
Yeah.
that is there. Then there are these industrial scale semi-automatic machines where the dough is made in a big cement mixer kind of a mixer. Then there is like an assembly line for dough balls, and so there is like this industrial scale stuff, but nothing really on a home-based robot size home use machine. So I think for us that was the difficulty.
Yeah. I think it's also hard because the iterations, I mean, this is a software guy, that perspective. The iterations are much slower.
Yeah.
The software goes, the world goes gaga over agile and, doing sprints that are 2 weeks long. But in the hardware world, nothing really moves in 2 weeks or
Right.
1 month or,
The Google design sprint is not going to work for
it
creating
does.
like the
Yeah.
next sort
Yeah.
of robot. Yeah.
So it has an impact on,
And there's so many dependencies, right? You have your prototype maker. He needs to make the part by the dimensions that you've given him.
The
If
barrier
he
to entry is a lot more, for example.
yeah, a
So,
lot more.
this brings up a good point. So, for everyone listening, what did I say? I told you this was really hard. Okay. So, here's what I really want to know is how did you stay the course for so long? And like, how did you do that? Like, spiritually, mentally, like, how? And you two still look like lovebirds, glowing, excited. Like, where are your battle scars, people?
They're all on our back. Well, I think
How do we stay that
how
long?
I had my own sort of mantra that I would just keep sort of repeating, which is one step at a time. I would always go back to that. It doesn't matter. Of course, you have a vision, and once that is set and the goal is set, you don't want to revisit it again and again, right? It's done. It's locked. Now it's about how do you take that one step at a time towards that goal. So for me, it was just as simple as that. One step at a time. Doesn't matter. We'll worry about that problem later. Let's just fix this problem right now. So within Rotimatic, whatever the sub assembly is stuck, it would literally be broken into baby steps.
So, Pranati is also somebody who has very strong faith. And I never understood it. In the beginning, when I joined, so I joined it a year or two later, midway into the
When she
journey.
was done blowing stuff up.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
That was when he's like, okay, I think we are
This is
covered.
for real. She stopped blowing things up.
I mean, even though I've known Pranati, she's a very competent engineer. But truth be told, in the early days, it was still her first startup, right?
Yeah.
And the magnitude of the tech challenge was also huge. So after 1 or 2 years, I started thinking that, okay, you know what? Have we figured everything out? Do we really know whether this can work? But she never really doubted any of this. She knew
It's
what she
possible.
wanted. Yeah. And I would always wonder that, okay, you know what would happen in terms of the variety of flour we want to support. I mean, I am somebody who has always a little bit of doubt. So, but
Mhm.
Pranati has extreme amount of faith. But I think
Mm.
the way we converged every time, where either when we hit a wall or when we burned something or blew something, was always ask ourselves a very important question: that what is driving us? Why are we doing it?
Mm.
And every time the answer, when we evaluated the problem, we realized that okay, it's a problem that we do care about.
Mhm.
And growing up somehow, you mentioned spirituality. Growing up somehow, my mom always used to tell me, and same for Pranati, I guess, that my mom said, work hard, but don't worry about
Oh,
the fruit of your labor. Like just
Result,
focus
yeah.
on doing the right thing, work hard,
Correct.
whatever.
Correct.
And I think that has stayed with us.
Yeah.
Every time we think, okay, are we solving a problem that's relevant to the world?
Correct.
Is it
Yeah.
something,
Is it
even though
big
it's
enough?
it's hardware, it's not very sexy, it's not as fundable, the ride is not very easy,
Yeah.
but we still believe that we are creating some value.
Yeah.
and value
Absolutely.
you both did create. So we're going to fast forward a little bit to when you had a wait list. Now, some people have reported it as a $72 million wait list because people, this machine is about $1,000, right? But think about the amount of momentum. What did that feel like to have so many people signed up to want your machine? Paint the
Mm,
picture of what that
mm.
must have felt like.
Yeah, it was pretty
It was surreal. That was,
unexpected.
yeah.
It was
Yeah.
totally unexpected
Yeah.
because we didn't imagine the magnitude of how well this would be received. I remember in 2013, we shot a video. We made a home video, like a quick one. We asked our investor, can we beautiful looking house? Can we borrow your house for a day? We just need the kitchen. And he said, yeah. And we rented the camera and the equipment that's needed. And if you've seen that ad, Rishi is the hero of
Cheap,
that
cheap,
ad.
cheap, cheap free labor.
No, he's done such a great job. He was like, basically the ad is, I don't know if you've seen it, but
So this is the first Rotimatic. This is the time when we showcased Rotimatic to the world for the very first time.
Wow.
It's like the
yeah,
Rotimatic video
the
that went viral.
first intro video of Rotimatic, and that sort of became so viral. I think in a month we had decided that in a month if we hit 100,000 views, we'll go celebrate.
Right.
And
And we thought that was a stretch target.
and that was a stretch because
Wow.
but we hit like 3 million views in the first month.
Wow.
And back then, in 2013, YouTube was sort of like, catching up and how many views. And also we were like, okay, and just went viral. There was no marketing money spent. There was nothing. It went viral on its own. We just had emailed the video to people who had signed up on our page, which was a very small list back then. And it just spread. And then the email list became bigger and bigger. And so in 2014, just 1 year later, we said, okay, let's start taking pre-orders, because that's the time when you want to raise funding from a VC, not an angel round but a proper round. And they will ask for credibility in terms of, okay, is the
Product
market
market fit
ready,
demand.
is the demand there, what price point, all that. And we said that, look, we'll do this pre-order, we'll not do it for the money. So we only took 10% deposit. We didn't take the whole amount. And in like 7 days, we got 8,500 orders,
Wow.
which was roughly 5
And
million
this
plus
wasn't
worth
just
of,
interest. People had paid some of the money already. So this
they
was
paid
like real.
10%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And back then, a lot of people were very, very, skeptical, or they didn't think this is a real product. They thought there's somebody behind trying to
Yeah.
push the roti.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
Some video
gimmicky
editing, video editing.
video editing and gimmicky product. It's not real. But there were 8,500 of those pioneer users who really saw that, okay, this is something we would love to try and support. And those were the ones we delivered to them in 2017. In fact, 2016 we started the delivery. By 2017 beginning of the year, we
Wait
had
a
done
second.
delivery.
So they sat waiting for this machine for a few years. They had
They,
that
they
much.
waited
And
they
I, and I,
waited
I
2.5 3 years.
actually
Wow.
asked, right, what were the big moments? I think the first big moment was when we did the pre-order.
Yeah.
I think the second big moment I still remember. Internally, we realized that we were going to get delayed.
Oh yeah.
And
1 year delay. Yeah.
it was a 1 year delay, and we were quite nervous. And Pranoti sent a video to the users who had our early users.
The 8,500 pre-order
Who
customers
paid money, by the way.
Yeah.
paid money.
And we were actually blown
$59,
away.
but
We were blown away by their support, by their love.
yeah, no. So we put out a video. So what we did is we created a forum or a small community on our website for these users, and every few months we would send them an update that, okay, the product is now on the manufacturing line, and this is the issue we are trying to solve, or the qualification of the product is, so just to keep them in the know-how of the journey. And then we released a video of an apology saying that, sorry, we are not able to give the machine to you on time. There's going to be a delay. But they were all so supportive. They said, no worries, it's fine, take your
We're with
time,
you. And
we're with you.
Wow.
It
so
was
I
And the
almost,
amazing.
power. Go
I
ahead.
almost feel that we had like an 8,000 people team behind us. And
Wow.
it almost felt like that in the early days.
Basically, they were so supportive because I mean, to be very uh, frank and practical about it, it was $59 that we had taken from them. But I think it wasn't so much about the value. It was more about responses and the replies we would get, it was
They were
so
invested
positive.
in the process. Yeah, which
They
is
were
so
emotionally, more than the money, they were emotionally feeling connected to the journey and the product. And they're like, it's fine, even if you fail, it's okay. There were such people.
I
So
have to say the Facebook community for Rotimatic is so vibrant. I mean, the amount of like recipe ideas and how passionate people are about the product is incredible. Like these aren't like normal customers people.
yeah.
Like
No,
anyone who has one is like passionate. I remember when one of my girlfriends had one before me and it was like a play date and she was showing off, let's be honest. And we were all like, our jaws dropped. This was like the most amazing thing ever. And she was so passionate. Like, you do not need salespeople because everyone who has your machine is happily using it at a party. So, you know what I want to know, since you can track the amount and
mm,
people, we're gonna show you how this machine works. And for radio people, either I'm gonna cut this out or you're just gonna hear it. But like, but really, it has this little smiley face at the end, so you can say how happy you are with it, which I really love. I have to say, Krish once did one that was not happy, and I'm like, "Why'd you do that? It was perfect." He's like, "I'm just sick of saying it's happy all the time," which I thought was really funny. But yeah, I just have to say, like, the community is insane that you've really sort of built. Okay,
yeah.
can we show them how one is? Is that one behind you like real? Can we turn
It
it
is,
on?
but it's not turned on. So if you
Okay.
want to see a
Well,
machine
you
in
know what?
operation,
It's fine. We will insert here B-roll. Equity, but there's something about being underestimated. And there's a story I read about you. I think you posted this in LinkedIn years ago, and it kind of went viral about how you were asked about how female entrepreneurs sort of deal with gender bias, and you go to this manufacturer and supplier. And I would love for you to tell the story of how you sort of dealt with that being underestimated.
yeah, that
Yeah.
was quite a funny way, actually. I don't know. I didn't know any
Sad
other
and funny
way.
both. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think, I mean, I don't know whether it's just the way the world is, right? The human condition is such that you have preconceived notions, you have perspectives that are formed because of the experiences and conditions that you grow up or see. So for me, it was similar. Nobody had seen engineers who are women and working on, especially mechanical. Even when I
Yeah.
was studying mechanical engineering, the cohort was not equal. So when I used to go for these meetings, they would think I'm the marketing person, or I'm the person who just has ideated it or is
Yeah.
now working on, which I ended up doing. Now I'm actually doing the business more than the tech. But in the early days, I was designing. I was doing the CAD modeling. I was breaking, building the Rotimatic. So the way I dealt with it was, Rishi used to ride a motorbike, and in Singapore these bikes are very big and bulky and heavy bikes that we he had. And one day I told him, teach me how to ride a bike. And my mom had ridden a bike, in her college days, so I always was like, okay, I also want to ride a bike. In Singapore it's not so safe, but nonetheless I was like, okay, teach me how to ride a bike. And in the car park he taught me how to ride a bike. I got my license, and I bought a bike. And I would go for these meetings on the motorbike with this helmet and my bag, sling bag with all the parts and my laptop. And then they started sort of seeing, okay, fine, okay, there's something. Like, you have this drive that you have to sometimes depict through other ways. You can't always be saying it with your words.
Yeah.
So I had to do that. That was pretty funny, but
But you're right. I mean, I have seen it many times as well. People would come for a meeting, and for every technical question, they would look at me, and I was like, "Hello, look the other way."
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
But
well,
there are
speaking of
unfortunate.
hidden talents, not only motorbike racing, but Rishi, this is kind of crazy because I've learned a bit about cricket now. I've interviewed Mithali Raj, who is like a
Ooh, lovely.
legend.
That's
And
lovely.
but you were under the tutelage at age 10 with Sachin Tendulkar's coach. Like you were gonna be this mega cricket star? Is that what was happening?
So
That's his parallel life.
my parents were, my parents were extremely they 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 raised us as extremely independent kids. So if we said, I might have just maybe said in passing that I want to be a cricketer. They're like, okay. And then they took me to Bombay, which is very far away from where I grew up. And then I was interviewed, or there was a test by Mr. Acharekar, who was Sachin's coach, and he selected me. I was supposed to learn cricket with him.
He's going to stay with him
Yeah,
also.
yeah. But I think, in hindsight, thank God I didn't go there. I think cricket is also extremely hard, and I prefer software. That was also a big love of mine. I always loved software.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's interesting though, even while you may not have become like a cricket star, I'm sure you enjoyed playing it. And you know, I've
Oh yeah,
noticed so many
absolutely.
leaders like Satya Nadella, Indra Nui have talked about cricket being an important blueprint for them in leadership,
Yeah.
sportsmanship in general. Do you feel
I
like that?
I played, yeah, absolutely. I played cricket all my life up
Yeah.
until university, and absolutely. I think any sport
Mm.
it definitely helps a lot.
Yeah. Um, in addition to sports, you know, I've been doing this segment called CEO Binge Club where I ask all my guests what they've been. Well, I used to say, what are you reading? But since the pandemic, everyone keeps saying, well, I was watching this and I was watching that. That's why I call it CEO Binge Club. But I need to know, what do you feel like are the books or content that really made a mark in your journey or life? Or just what are you doing right now? What are you reading right now?
Honestly, because we have two little boys, we've really stopped watching.
Yeah.
We don't watch Netflix. We only watch it with our kid, and we make him watch Hindi
you know,
movies.
you know, we don't
So
watch because we don't let them watch, and then you can't watch because you don't want to set a
yeah,
bad example.
seriously, I have a lockdown on gadgets in my house right now. So all the gadgets are in lockdown.
Yeah.
So for our son, the only way to sort of, fine, you can watch today, but then you have to watch a Hindi movie with us, because that's the
Yeah.
only way he can learn the language or the culture. We're staying so far away. So
Mhm.
that's what we watch, mostly Hindi movies, which are some really great movies that are coming up, right? Like, and we love to watch it, show him movies that are appropriate
What's
for
the
him.
last
So for
Hindi
example,
movie that you watched?
like Mission Mangal. It's a movie. It's a great movie. What else has Orith watched other than the usual, the Dangal, and he's watched Sui Dhaga. Those really nice warm movies, warm stories.
Yeah.
So
So
that's the content.
he's more into Avengers and super
Oh yeah.
hero
Yes.
movies.
Yes.
So we're trying to show him Hanuman and these kind of
Indian
Indian
superheroes.
superheroes.
I mean, you know,
He
you
calls it the Hanuman. So
what
that's what
about
we.
books? I know you both are avid readers.
Yeah. So book.
Pranoti has taken a big interest in spirituality in the last few years, and she's been
Yeah.
pushing the family, including me. Uh,
No, I think
to
I'm not pushing, but I think it's in general so interesting and so intriguing, because
Yeah.
like you said, right? When you're doing something difficult, you see yourself in the mirror all the time, also, right? Like, okay, why am I thinking like this? And you start observing yourself. Okay, this is my problem. I need to fix this. And then you start observing how your mind works and how your personality is and what is ego. And you start drilling deeper into these basic concepts. And so for me, it was like a natural transition into Vedanta and reading about, because there's a lot of research and depth that has gone in a lot of these books. So for example, yoga, right from the asanas, but there are like the other ashtanga, right? So there are 8 parts to the yoga, and if you drill into each part, it's pretty thought through, well designed thing for the human condition. And it's very intriguing, and that sort of led me to Ayurveda and the whole
Inner
nutrition,
engineering, right?
in engineering, absolutely. And it's so I feel it's almost like it's the basic.
Mm.
And growing up, we have it in the culture, right? You have a lot of stories you hear, like what Rishi mentioned, the whole Bhagavad Gita thing, right? Don't worry about the result, just focus on your actions right now, the result will come. But then when you read it, it's sort of like a full circle for you.
Yeah.
Okay, this is what it means, and this is what how you apply it, and it's very fascinating.
Yeah.
So, and the experiences you have.
So I was quite the skeptic. I was like, "Oh, this is bullshit," and But Pranati changed my mind a little bit. I've been meditating on and off for the last 3-4 years and reading alongside Pranati. So one of the books that I like, it's called The Untethered Soul.
Oh, I love that book. Yes.
And,
Michael Singer, right?
yeah,
Yes.
and I reread it many times. You know, I like to read it from chapter 10 onwards. So whenever I'm feeling a little bit off balance, I go to chapter 10 and start reading it. And
I think Eckhart Tolle's the what's
Yeah.
it called? The
uh,
New Earth is also very, very simple read, but it's
which
very
I'm reading right
profound.
now. I'm reading right
It's
now.
quite profound, and it sort of crystallizes all this know-how. And we are engineers, right? So as an engineer, you want to go inside, how does this part of my brain work, or how does this organ work? It's almost like a machine for us, right? So when you start looking into it, it's one, as a student, and we believe we are students for life. So we and I think that is something we got from our parents, because learning has to be the part of growing up as well. You have to constantly keep learning. And so these subjects are kind of like hobby subjects, but then they start defining your life, and the
Yeah.
way you look at the world, and the way you look at life. So it's quite fascinating. And
Yeah.
we're trying to see how, as parents, we can build platforms or build products that can actually be useful for other parents to sort of help with their kids and themselves. There is that gap, we feel. Because content, right, like you said, there is a lot of binging you can do on Netflix, but at the end of the day, you still feel um, you still are not, I don't know, there's no satisfaction to it. And you
Yeah.
just enjoy that moment when you're watching, and then after that you're
Yeah.
so
One series that I love is Cosmos.
Oh, yes. That's good too. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I find it extremely, extremely fascinating. Every aspect of it. So
Yeah.
Cosmos is very fascinating. In fact, the defining moment for us was when we realized, when we read letters that were exchanged between Einstein and Rabindranath Tagore.
Oh, that's got to be so interesting. Is that in a book?
There is no book on it, or I have not come across it, but I've read a lot of it on the net.
Oh, wow.
And in fact, I have a picture in our house of Einstein, and a black and white picture of Einstein and Rabindranath Tagore. And it's so fascinating, right? Because modern physics at the end of the day converges into this unknown, unknowable sort of sphere.
Yeah.
And it's super exciting to read those conversations, because even for a brilliant mind like Einstein, he was riddled with these questions, and how Rabindranath Tagore, with his know-how and his understanding of the world, was trying to give him answers. It's very
Yeah. So
fascinating.
the partnership of science and spirituality is what
Yeah,
excites us.
yeah,
That is quite intriguing and exciting.
quite
Yeah.
exciting.
You know, that is exciting. And, there's no good transition to this, but, the one sort of last thought bubble that I really wanted to cover was Singapore. I think for me personally, one of the things that the pandemic has done is open my mind up to thinking more globally in general.
Mm.
And how do you feel that, like, how much did the actual basing yourself in Singapore play into your journey?
Actually, for a hardware startup,
Yeah.
we have seen the Singapore startup scene evolve in front of our eyes. When I started my first company, it was very nascent, and now it's just phenomenally active and vibrant. And for the work that we do, Singapore is actually a phenomenal place. This was the semiconductor electronics hub. So there's a lot of talent, a lot of senior talent around that that understands manufacturing and the hardware space in general. And it also has close ties with other places around which are good for manufacturing.
Mm.
So great for hardware startups. So we've been very lucky. The
Mm.
ecosystem's been very supportive. Our investors have been great here.
Yeah,
So
there's a lot of
nothing to
government
complain.
support. and it's a small place. So if you have sort of gotten a global product market fit, then there is definitely a lot of attention given and support comes with
Yeah.
it. So that's been very good for us. Also, the intellectual property, the protection, it's just a very straightforward. Like there's safety and security is probably the best in the world here.
Yeah.
So we don't have to worry about these issues. Everything happens by the book. If they say it'll take 1 week, it'll take 1 week, or everything is timely, everything is 20 minutes away, not more than that. So that sort of takes care of the day-to-day struggles of life for us, and then we can really
You know,
channelize that energy
you know,
into building.
Singapore is a country where you don't have to ask questions. Like, I mean, these are unrelated questions, but a question might be that, if you know that eating unhealthy makes you unhealthy, why do you eat unhealthy?
Right.
Or if you know guns are dangerous, why do you allow for guns? In Singapore, you don't ask these questions because this is a very practical, pragmatic, and
Hmm.
what should have happened happens.
Right.
So it's a great, 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 great place from that perspective.
And
Yeah.
the food is good. That is like my biggest memory of Singapore. Is there plenty of things you can buy to eat with the rotis that you're going to make from your Rotimatic people? I can tell you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, just it's not just the ITOR, which is a code name. Our first son is named on another
uh,
combination of the word
anagram
roti.
anagram of roti.
Oh, that's so interesting. I think it's dreamy to be able to work with your life partner. So many of our listeners already know that my husband and I work together too. And for us, this has been like just such a blessing and a way of life on like so many levels. But I think a lot of people like always, and I'm sure you both get this question too. What is it like to work together? And now you're adding in your case, 2 kids. Like, give us what that looks like, how you make that work, because it's tough. Like even just the balancing kids and work. But give our listeners and watchers, like give us your best tips and tricks.
For us, the truth is, it's not that we've not fought or we've not had differences, uh, but I think at the core we do respect each other and each other's strength a lot. I think if there is that core respect
Yeah.
or core understanding, then it eventually is fine. Because a lot of people, I have a counter question for people who say that, hey, it's very hard to work with your partner, and you might have differences or fights, etc., etc. But there is another side of the coin. I have had what if you don't get along with a co-founder of yours
Yeah.
who's not your wife? And it is not uncommon to see to hear of examples or cases where two co-founders had a falling
Yeah.
out. And at least with your life partner, there are
Other hooks in place.
you will, if the fundamentals are in place, you will converge again. And
But that's also a scary bit, right? Because you are carrying this burden of your, let's say you had a fight in at a work whatever discussion, and then you bring that back home, and it's sort of, there's no boundary, right, if you're working with your life partner. And for me, the way I would look at it would always be that, see, either ways doesn't matter, because either ways fights happen, right? Whether it's at work or at home,
what about the
there is,
toilet seat or something else? So we
yeah,
have different different
yeah, I
different
mean,
topics to fight
there'll
about.
always be arguments, right? That's the part of living with two, individuals, two ego minds living together. It's not going to be easy. Might as well, two engineering brains coming together to solve a problem in the world. At least it'll be worth that. So that
Mhm.
would be my way of looking at it, that, it's fine. Either ways we would have fought. Now we are doing something so much bigger and better, and so we would just reconcile with your own ways of dealing with understanding the other person's viewpoint, having the patience to understand, going through the fights. You sometimes take time to understand yourself as well, right? But then I think with this partnership you get a mirror, and then it's all about you then taking notice of that mirror. And so if you can start noticing it and start, and I think, honestly, Alexandra, it's all about the attitude, right?
Yeah,
um, I
I
mean,
couldn't
it's,
agree more.
if you have the attitude that everything is a learning, and you have to pick up yourself and move on, learn from it, get better, I think it's just that, I think. And we've been super blessed. We've two kids along the way, so there are too many points on which we sometimes are having the same viewpoints, but there are places where we argue. I think it's not argue so much. Now that we respect each other, we say that, okay, this is my viewpoint. I understand you have a different one, and this is what I feel. These are the pros and cons. It's the engineering kicks in at the end of the day.
Yeah, sometimes I like to fight more than she doesn't like to fight too much. So it's like, okay, I need to find an avenue.
It's because she's exhausted. She has two kids. And
Exactly. I don't have the energy.
Okay.
It's not
I,
worth
I
it.
also have two kids, okay?
I forgot. And we have two boys. So that's actually the reason. There's no time and no energy left.
I can so relate. So how do you manage that? I mean, like I can say from my own experience, I think actually going home to my son is actually what breaks it up, right? Because you're immediately sort of engrossed in his world and what he's doing, that it's an automatic game changer and you want to be present for your child, right? So how do you deal with that? How do you manage it? Because you have littler ones.
Yeah. I think yeah, it's just that the quality of time is becomes more important, right? I mean, quantity doesn't matter at the end of the day if you're present with the person. Because I have caught myself a lot of times, like my son is saying something to me, and I'm actually in the background thinking about something else, and then suddenly I'm like, oh, okay, I need to. Because sometimes I have to tell him to repeat himself, and he starts getting pissed off because I have not paid attention. That's my alarm. Like, okay, I need to be present. So I think that sort of keeps us going with our kids, and I think they also sense it,
Yeah.
and they want your presence. And I think for us, we've been so blessed, and I think that's the other advantage of staying in Singapore, because we have a full-time help, and she's been with us for 9 years, and
Wow.
she's part of family, and she's taken care of the kids, and I tell my kids, she's also your mom. I might have given birth to you, but she's the one who's really taking care of you. And there is that love and that peace that she sort of maintains in the house. So we're very blessed to have her.
Yeah.
And of course, parents are there, but they're back in India, and they come and visit. But on a day-to-day basis, these small things really matter.
They do.
Because I think that's the other bit of the hardware company, software company. You have a product, you launch it, and then there's very little after sales that you need to worry about. And in Rotimatic, there are all the other challenges that also come with it,
Yeah.
like the manufacturing, making sure that every product is right and good quality before it's delivered to you. It's bulky item. There's after sales. Users use it in a different their own style. There are different flowers, and some maintain it, some don't.
Now you're scaring a lot of
So a
people.
lot of after sales.
A lot of entrepreneurs.
No, I think
Like forget it. They're
look,
like,
so if we look, no, look, if we can do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah.
Because really, it's all about what you said, right? The basics and what you stick to and what you want to do, the why behind it. All of that is important, and I think teamwork, right? Of course, both me and Rishi are a solid team, and there's an extended team of users, but there is also a large team that is building the product and building the company. So there is all of that put together. So really, if we can do it, anybody can do hardware. I think that's another thing. We need more examples.
yes. And you two are such a shining light of that. So if people want to buy one, where can they go?
There's one and only one place where you can go. It's rotimatic.com. That's it. That's where we sell. And because in COVID, there have been a lot of these scam sites that are trying to sell. They take our pictures, they make their own product pages, and they sell it for like $29, $59, and they are scamming a lot of people. So just to
Do not
warn,
get scammed, people. Go to
yeah.
rotimatic.com.
If you get scammed, don't get angry at us.
That's right.
Definitely don't get angry at them. But Rishi, I read once that you said that Pranoti is a much better engineer than cook. And I have to say, for that, I am so grateful because of that single thing. We are all eating so much better thanks to the both of you. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank
It
you
was so
so
lovely
much.
talking
It's
to you.
really nice chatting with you. And I wish we were in the valley, for
I
these reasons.
know. I know. Well, I actually wish I was in Singapore. So
I know.